Food prices are soaring as a result of fuel and interest rate hikes. Combined with the war in Ukraine, the rising global oil prices and a weak exchange rate, families are being forced to make some serious adjustments and choices about what to keep in their food baskets and what to leave out. Let's talk more about the causal factors and the action needed to mitigate them. I'd like to welcome Professor Patrick Bond from the University of Johannesburg's Department of Sociology and Mervyn from the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Association. Thank you very much to the pair of you for making the time. Mervyn, I want to kick off with you. Your organization conducts a household affordability index. What is in an average food basket that you used as a sample, and how much have the prices increased?
So good evening, Iman, and good evening to all your viewers. Yes, we track the price of a basket of 44 very, very basic foods that low-income households tell us they wish to purchase on a monthly basis. And just to give your viewers some idea, I mean, it contains maize meal and rice and flour and bread and chicken and soup and a bit of meat and a bit of vegetables and so on. So no luxuries, basic foods. And in April, our basket stood at 4,542 Rand and 93 cents. Now, we've seen major increases across the board. 34 out of the 44 foods increased between February and April. But just to look at, for instance, some of the outstanding items. So we've seen cooking oil increase by about 42% year on year. We've seen potatoes increase by about 10% year on year, chicken 13%, margarine 13%, polony 31%, and so the list continues and continues.
And we're going to come back to that impact as we look at some of the causal factors. I want to go to, well, actually, in fact, let's just stay there right now. Let's stay with the personal picture. Your organization is right where people are. You know firsthand the struggles, the issues and the experiences of everyday South Africans. Share your perspective on the impacts of all the aforementioned factors on people's quality of life, especially pensioners, Mervyn.
So, Iman, the quality of life has dropped significantly. Let's remember that in South Africa, the lower income sector have been struggling for years, even pre-COVID. But of course, the increase in unemployment, particularly around the COVID period, has made matters worse. The social grant and wages are not keeping track with the level of inflation. And it is not only food, it is, for instance, transport, it is electricity, and it is debt servicing. And when these things increase massively, it leaves less money in the pockets of households in order to purchase food, while the price of food are also increasing at the same time. And so households tell us they've cut back on the amount of food they eat. They've also cut back on the quality of food they eat and are now going in for cheap food. And of course, that has dire consequences for us from a socio-economic and health perspective into the future.
I mean, and as you say as well, you know, they've made all the adjustments that they could possibly make. In fact, just to touch on something you mentioned, I was personally gobsmacked when I saw the price of cooking oil. Sunflower oil is up a whopping 55%. You also have canola oil, I think, similar, also up 40%. And we're told that it will continue to rise. Brent crude oil as well, last time I checked today, was up 1.73%. Professor Bond, oil, both the cooking and the crude varieties, are part of the story of hardship, which is worsened by the war in Ukraine. Please explain to our viewers why this has such a widespread impact.
It's true, and thanks very much, Iman. And Mervyn's group is stunningly important for the micro, for the household, for looking at low-income, working-class people, because frankly, our Stats SA isn't doing that good a job. The Stats SA report that just came out actually put the oil and fat increase only at 21, fuel at 29. Now, those are very high. Electricity, 14. Public transport, 13. Those are the main categories that break into double digits. Well, why many of these are the imported effect of, as you say, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I think had that not happened, we'd also be seeing a little bit of the internal crisis of Eskom passed through, because they're getting a sort of, quite systematic double-digit increases. Many would say entirely unjustified given their performance, but particularly the fossil fuels. And it is such a tragedy. I think the entire viewership must agree after seeing what happened in Durban and Maritzburg, Mervyn, right, in these KZN areas where there was a rain bomb in April 11, 12, that killed about 500 people. And then it came again on May 21, just over a week ago, to some areas on the coast. 267 millimeters of rain last week, 351. These are records, and they suggest another important factor, which is the climate catastrophe. So when you put these together, we have to figure out now, if you're doing policy advice, should you raise interest rates, which usually cools down an economy and lowers the buying power of people who are in debt? And that's what, unfortunately, Lesego Kganyago always goes to first. That's what the Reserve Bank is always trying to do, keep inflation between 3 and 6. It hasn't broken out above 6 in the April figures, but they're still raising interest rates pretty dramatically, 0.5% last week. So that's the big debate, I think, policy-wise. What do you do?
Yeah, and the thing is, just listening to you speak there's such a vast and complicated tapestry of events that are intertwined, and I wish we could just tease them apart a little bit. Let's perhaps then go straight to the Finance Ministry and Treasury. I think you're of the belief that they're not doing enough to shield us or to mitigate these events.
Well, in fact, you could argue the opposite, that because of pressure from the financial markets, international, local, what the Treasury Finance Minister, Ina Godongwana, just did in February was to allow dramatic capital flight. And he released hundreds of billions of rands by lowering, it's called Section 28, and it's a provision that your insurance, your pension, my pension, have to be kept in the country. And it used to be 70% should be kept in the country, but he lowered it to 50. And so we're seeing an outflow of capital. So I think what Treasury has done is poured petrol on the inflation fire. Why? Because when you have an outflow of capital of that magnitude, you can just imagine all your financial advisors, your pension fund managers, they're looking everywhere. Can we get our money out of this country? That's kind of what we call the unpatriotic bourgeoisie. And when you do that, then you need a higher interest rate to bring in more money from outside to be attracted to make up for that loss, whether it's licit, legal financial flows, or illicit. And that's the damn thing, that our finance minister and his Treasury officials have really been asleep at the wheel on regulating these flows. And that means Lesego Kganyago feels he's got this sort of mandate to raise the interest rates to bring more money back. And by raising interest rate, it slows the economy and contributes to debt crises. I think all of us who are in debt, we know an extra 0.5% is pretty painful.
Yeah, it is definitely painful. And if there's time, I hope we can circle back to Eskom and diesel, because there's a tragedy there with Eskom's reliance on open cycle gas turbines, which are essentially fed by diesel to meet our electricity demands. But I want to pause on that one and come very quickly to Mervyn. Mervyn, I had a wry smile when I read what you wrote about what you termed the trickery about supermarket specials. And my mum, by the way, lives in Pietermaritzburg, is also prone to going to the supermarket and is caught by these specials. And you say they dazzle you with savings here, but they pick your pocket there, because no one really knows the fair and true cost of food. How and where can this information be sought and then disseminated to the public so that they know where to check on any given day what the true cost of food items should be, and then they can make a wiser decision?
Iman, that is part of the difficulty of the South African economy, is that, for instance, we have figures about the farm gate. So we can tell what a farmer would pay for a liter of milk, for instance. But then it goes into the manufacturing, production, packaging system, and then reappears in the store. And between the farm gate and the retail sector, very little information is out there. In fact, the value chain of our food are part of the most intransparent aspects of the South African economy. We just do not know whether, when it appears on the shelf, whether that is a fair price to pay in relation to what the farmer was paid. And let's remember, if the farmer is not paid properly, then the farm worker carries the burden of the entire food system. And that's part of the difficulty. And so we are encouraging consumers to use your social media. Take a picture of the price if you've seen a massive increase in any kind of food, and just circulate it on Facebook, circulate it on WhatsApp, and let's get a discussion going, which would, of course, alert in turn the Competition Commission to begin to see whether there's fairness in that price.
I'm smiling because they say the millennials are only on Twitter, so we have to include Twitter there as well. Final comment from you, Patrick, on this one, which is something that Mervyn actually raised. We're overexposed to global supply lines, and we really must start developing sufficient local resources. From your vantage point, whose responsibility is it to make that happen? We have about a minute, Patrick. The challenge is on.
Well, it's very easy because it's Ibrahim Patel and the Minister of Trade and Industry. I would add Finance Minister Godongwana, who has a sort of pro-globalization view at a time when, as you've heard, it's all breaking up. The global value chains are in chaos. We have ships that aren't able to get out of China because of COVID, many reasons to try to do localization. So that's Patel's mantra, but he's not doing it very well. I mean, the easiest thing would be oil, and we're so reliant upon international shipments of oil. It's just absurd that we're not getting a much greater supply local. Import substitution is the term to bring that price back down. It's insane, isn't it? So I hope there's going to be this sort of social unrest that says not just protest for the sake of it or loot, but actually target some of these characters in Pretoria, that really need to feel that sort of pressure. That is to say, economic justice. And for that, I think Mervyn's got, some of the best information, the best connections. So I leave it to you for the wrap up, Mervyn.
Yeah, I mean, my time is up, unfortunately, but certainly I think there needs to be an ellipsis attached to this conversation. We've got to have more, and we've got to bring more of these players into the room, as you say, Patrick, that really control this direction that we need to move in. Appreciate both of you, appreciate your time. Patrick Bond and Mervyn Abrams.